Postage stamps and postal history of Great Britain surveys postal history from the United Kingdom, and the postage stamps issued by the country and its various historical territories until the present day. The postal history of the United Kingdom is notable in at least two respects. First, for the introduction of postage stamps in 1840. And secondly for the establishment of an efficient postal system throughout the British Empire, laying the foundation of many national systems still in existence today. Early history. The story begins in the 12th century with Henry I, who appointed messengers to carry letters for the government. It is estimated that between 1100 and 1135, 4,500 letters were carried by these messengers. At this time, private individuals had to make their own arrangements. Henry III provided uniforms for the messengers, and Edward I instituted posting houses where the messengers could change horses. The reign of Edward II saw the first postal marking, handwritten notation saying, "Haste. Post haste." Henry VIII created the Royal Mail in 1516. Appointing Brian Tuke as Master of the Posts, while Elizabeth I appointed Thomas Randolph as Chief Postmaster, under Thomas Witherings, Chief Postmaster under Charles I. The Royal Mail was made available to the public. 1635. With a regular system of post roads, houses, and staff. From this time through to the postal reforms of 1839 to 1840, it was most common for the recipient to pay the postage, although it was possible to prepay the charge at the time of sending. In 1661, Charles II made Henry Bishop the first Postmaster General. In answer to customer complaints about delayed letters, Bishop introduced the Bishop mark, a small circle with month and day inside, applied at London, in the General Post Office and the Foreign Section, and soon after adopted in Scotland, Edinburgh, and Ireland, Dublin. In subsequent years, the postal system expanded from 6 roads to a network covering the country, and post offices were set up in both large and small towns, each of which had its own postmark. In 1680, William Docker established the London Penny Post, a mail delivery system that delivered letters and parcels weighing up to £1 within the city of London and some of its immediate suburbs for the sum of 1 penny. Postage stamps and the Great Office Reform. The Great Post Office Reform of 1839 and 1840 was championed by Rowland Hill, often credited with the invention of the postage stamp. As a way to reverse the steady financial losses of the post office, Hill convinced Parliament to adopt the uniform 4-penny post, whereby a flat 4d per half-an-ounce rate, equivalent to 10s 8d pound for heavier items, was charged regardless of distance. December 1839, letters could arrive at any address in the United Kingdom. The rate went into effect on 5 December 1839 but only lasted for 36 days. This was immediately successful, and on 10 January 1840 the uniform penny post started, charging only 1d for prepaid letters and 2t if the fee was collected from the recipient. Fixed rates meant that it was practical to avoid handling money to send a letter by using an adhesive label, and accordingly, on May 6, the penny black became the world's first postage stamp in use. After more than 2,000 suggestions were submitted, Rowland Hill chose the method and printer, and worked by trial and error to achieve the required result. He decided to go with Perkins, Bacon and Petch, a firm of banknote printers, to carry out the work by the process of steel engraving, and the head of the Queen as engraved by William Wyon for a special medal struck to celebrate Her Majesty's official visit to the City of London in the year of her coronation. Quote, "The stamp was originally for use only within the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland and as such was, in effect, a local stamp. For this reason the name of the country was not included within the design, a situation which continued by agreement with foreign post offices, provided the sovereign's effigy appeared on the stamp. Envelopes sold with postage paid did not include this, so were marked with the country's name. In 1951, the special commemorative issue for the Festival of Britain included the name of Britain. Incidentally, it could therefore be said that the name of the country then appeared for the first time on a stamp of the UK. Although the word British had appeared on British Empire exhibition commemorative stamps of 1924, after the stamp was circulating, it became obvious that black was not a good choice of stamp color, since any cancellation marks were hard to see. So from 1841 onwards, the stamps were printed in a brick red color. The penny reds continued in use for decades, with about 21 billion being produced. Victorian era. The Victorian age saw an explosion of experimentation. The inefficiency of using scissors to cut stamps from the sheet inspired trials with rouletting, the Archer roulette, and then with perforation, which became standard practice in 1854. In 1847, the octagonal 1 shilling, £0.05 became the first of the British embossed postage stamps to be issued, followed by 10D stamps the following year, and 6D, £0.025 values in 1854. Surface-printed stamps first appeared in the form of a 4D stamp in 1855, printed by de la Rue, and subsequently became the standard type. 1/2 D, halfpenny, and 1.5D. Penny halfpenny, pronounced penny halfpenny, or 3 halfpence. Engraved stamps issued in 1870 were the last engraved types of Queen Victoria. The next would not appear until 1913. Surface-printed stamps of the 1860s and 1870s all used the same profile of Victoria, but a variety of frames, watermarks, and corner lettering. A 5 shilling, abbreviated as 5 or as 5s, £0.25 stamp first appeared in 1867, followed by 10 shilling, £0.50, and £1 values in 1878, culminating in a £5 stamp in 1882. Meanwhile, the age of the penny reds had come to an end along with the Perkins-Bacon printing contract. The new low values were also surface-printed. First was a penny stamped colored Venetian red in a square frame, issued in 1880. However, the passage of the Customs and Inland Revenue Act 1881 necessitated new stamps valid also as revenue stamps, and so the penny lilac was issued in that year, inscribed Postage and Inland Revenue. This stamp remained the standard letter stamp for the remainder of Victoria's reign, and vast quantities were printed. Later issues were inscribed Postage and Revenue, which became the more familiar Postage Revenue. 1883 and 1884 saw experimentation with stamps using fugitive inks with the lilac and green issue. These were rather plain designs, low values in lilac and high values in green. Because those were the only colors available, they succeeded in their purpose. Relatively few of the stamps survived usage, their colors fading away when soaked from the envelope, but they were not liked by the public. The last major issue of Victoria was the Jubilee issue of 1887, a set of 12 designs ranging from 1/2 D to 1s, most printed in 2 colors or on colored paper. Although issued during the Jubilee year, they were not issued specifically for the occasion, and are thus not commemoratives. Early 20th century, when Edward VII succeeded to the throne, new stamps became necessary. The approach was very conservative. However, most of the Jubilee frames were reused and the image of the king was still a single profile. Edward's reign was fairly short and there were no major changes of design as a result. Chalk surface paper was introduced during this time. This type of paper can be detected by rubbing the surface with silver, which leaves a black mark. By contrast, the stamps of George V were innovative from the very first. The first issue made was of the 1/2D and 1D values, which were in the same colors as used in the previous reign. Although the main design feature remained the same, a central ellipse for the portrait, an ornamental frame, value tablet at the base and a crown at the top, a three-quarter portrait was used for the first time. However, subsequent designs reverted to the standard profile. The UK's first commemorative stamps were issued for the British Empire exhibition in 1924. The pair of large-format stamps featured a lion in an imposing stance. They were issued twice, in 1924 and then in 1925, the stamps of each year being inscribed with the year of issue. A second set of commemoratives in 1929 marked the 9th Congress of the Universal Postal Union (UPU), held in London that year. Independence of the Irish Free State. Following the Anglo-Irish Treaty of 1921, responsibility for posts and telegraphs transferred to the new provisional government. Upon the formal independence of the Irish Free State in December 1922, and then transferred to the Free State government, a Postmaster General was initially appointed by the Free State government, being replaced by the Office of Minister for Posts and Telegraphs in 1924. An early visible manifestation was the repainting of all postboxes green instead of red, plus the overprinting of British postage stamps prior to the introduction of Irish stamps. Abdication and War. A set of 4 stamps was issued in 1936 for Edward VIII before he abdicated. George VI's coronation was marked with a commemorative, part of an omnibus issue which included every colony in the empire. New definitives featured a profile of the king on a solid color background, based on a plaster cast by Edmund Dulick. This was a precursor of the Machins 3 decades later. See below. The century of the postage stamp was celebrated in 1940 with a set of 6 stamps depicting Victoria and George VI side by side. By the following year, wartime exigencies affected stamp printing, with the 1937 stamps being printed with less ink, resulting in significantly lighter shades. Post-war issues included commemoratives for the return of peace, the Silver Jubilee and the 1948 Summer Olympics in 1948, and the 75th anniversary of the UPU in 1949. In 1950 the colors of all the low values were changed. 1951 saw a new series of high values, 2s60, 5s, 10s, £1, and 2 commemoratives for the Festival of Britain. Modern era. When Elizabeth II succeeded her father in 1952, new stamps were needed. A collection of variations on a theme that came to be known as the Wilding issues, based on a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, was the result. This portrait was by photographer Dorothy Wilding. Wildings were used until 1967, when the Machen issues were introduced on 5 June. The Machen design is very simple, a profile of the Queen on a solid color background, and very popular, still being the standard British stamp. They have been printed in scores of different colors. In addition, decimalization required new denominations, and there have technical improvements in the printing process, resulting in literally hundreds of varieties known to specialists. Today, the postage stamp is used in many countries and once colonies of Great Britain. Once colonized countries of Great Britain at one point all used the penny black portrait of Queen Victoria, such as Barbados, Nevis, Fiji, Trinidad, British Guiana, and India. Many formerly colonized countries still support a portrait of Queen Elizabeth, although some have branched out to stamps depicting scenery, birds or beasts. Design trends of British stamps. Up to the 1950s, British commemorative stamps were few and far between. Most of the stamps were definitive issues in which the portrait of the reigning monarch was the dominant element. Even after commemorative stamps began to appear more often during the 1950s and early 1960s, the monarch's effigy was prominent, usually taking up a quarter to a third of the stamp's design, which limited flexibility and creativity. A change came in 1965 when the then Postmaster General Tony Benn issued new criteria for what could appear on stamps. Designer David Gentleman wrote to Benn about alternative design approaches, suggesting the monarch's head be replaced by another national symbol, such as a crown of the country name, Great Britain, or United Kingdom. A compromise, a small silhouette of the Queen based on the coinage head of Mary Gillick, was accepted, and this has been the standard ever since for commemorative stamps, when the monarch's portrait is part of the stamp's main design, as for example in the case of issues commemorating the Queen's birthday, then the silhouette is not needed and usually does not appear. Another trend is the growing use of stamps to commemorate events related to the present royal family. Up to Elizabeth II's accession in 1952, the only commemorative stamps to have been issued related to royal events were for George V's A Silver Jubilee in 1935, George VI's A Coronation in 1937, and a 1948 issue to commemorate George VI's 25th wedding anniversary. Since 1952, however, stamps have been issued to commemorate many royal occasions. In addition, memorial stamps have been issued after the deaths of Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1998, in Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, in 2002. With regard to previous monarchs, stamps were issued in 1987 to mark the 150th anniversary of Queen Victoria's accession, and in 1997 to mark the 450th anniversary of King Henry VIII's death. From 2008 to 2011, stamps were issued featuring all of England's kings and queens and also the Scottish House of Stuart. Regional issues. Beginning in 1958, regional issues were introduced in the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales. While these issues are only sold at post offices in the respective countries, the Northern Irish, Scottish and Welsh issues are valid throughout the United Kingdom, the Channel Islands, since 1969, and Isle of Man, since 1973, now issue their own stamps which are not valid anywhere else. British postal services abroad. The United Kingdom has introduced postal services throughout the world and has often made use of British definitives bearing local overprints. See also List of British postage stamps. List of people on stamps of the United Kingdom. London Penny Post. Penny Blue. Post Office. United Kingdom. The British Postal Museum and Archive. Revenue stamps of the United Kingdom. References. Selected further reading. General. Hamilton. Patrick. British stamps. A description of the postage stamps of the United Kingdom. London. Peter Davies. 1948 338p. Supplement in 1954. 75p. Low. Robson. British postage stamps of the 19th century. London. National Postal Museum. First ed. 1968. Second ed. 1979. Low. Robson. The Encyclopedia of British Empire Postage Stamps. Volume 1. Great Britain and the Empire in Europe. London. Robson Low. 1952 456p. Mackay, James. British Stamps. London. Longman. 1985. ISBN 0-582 40620-X. 247p. Mackay, James A. Under the Gum, Background to British Stamps 1840 to 1940. Limassol, James Bendon. 1997, ISBN 9963-579-760. 536p. Oliver, Sidney and F. Hugh Valency. The Postage Stamps of Great Britain. 1840 to 1922. London. Stamp Collecting. 1923. 563p. Rose, Stuart. Royal Mail Stamps. A Survey of British Stamp Design. Oxford. Phaidon. 1980, ISBN 0-7148-2072-5. 128p. Todd, T. A History of British Postage Stamps. London. Duckworth. 1949. 274p. Wymon, J. J. Postage Stamps of Great Britain and Their History. New Enon. G. Ball Press. 1986, ISBN 9071622010. 396p. Williams, L. N. and M. Commemorative Postage Stamps of Great Britain. London. Arco. 1967. 206p. Queen Victoria and King Edward VII. Beaumont, K. M. and John Easton. The Postage Stamps of Great Britain. Part 3. The Embossed Issues. The Surface Printed Issues of Queen Victoria and King Edward VII. London. Royal Philatelic Society. 1964. 344p. Seymour, J. B. and Clive Gardner Hill. The Postage Stamps of Great Britain. Part 1. Introduction to the Line Engraved Issues. The Imperforate Line Engraved Issues. 1842-1853. London. Royal Philatelic Society. 1967. 336p. Wiggins, W. R. D. The Postage Stamps of Great Britain. Part 2. The Perforated Line Engraved Issues. London. Royal Philatelic Society. 1962. 220p. King George V. Beaumont, K. M. and J. B. M. Stanton. The Postage Stamps of Great Britain. Part 4. The Issues of King George V. London. Royal Philatelic Society. 1957. 248p. Muir, Douglas N. George V and the G. P. O. Stamps. Conflict and Creativity. London. British Postal Museum and Archive. 2010, ISBN 978-0-9553569-2-6. 275p. Phillips, Stanley. The Stamps of Great Britain. 1911-21. London. Stanley Gibbons. 1921. 105p. King Edward VIII. Kirk, A. J. King Edward VIII. A Study of the Stamps of the Reign of King Edward VIII. Leon C. G. B. Philatelic Publications Limited for the Great Britain Philatelic Society. 1974, ISBN 0-90151211-7. 31p. King George VI. Worsfold, Peter. Great Britain King George VI Low-Value Definitive Stamps. An Illustrated Study of the Development of Their Design. London. GBPS. 2001, ISBN 0-90763017-0. 40p. Queen Elizabeth II. Potter, David. British Elizabethan Stamps. The Story of the Postage Stamps of the United Kingdom, Guernsey, Jersey and the Isle of Man. From 1952 to 1970. London. Batsford. 1971, ISBN 0-71340-381-0. 190p. Postage dues. Furphy, Michael. British Postage Due Mail. 1914 to 1971. A Study of Uses of the Pre-Decimal Postage Due Stamps. Ashford. The Author. 1993, ISBN 0-9522208-0-6. 74p. Postmarks. Orcock, R. C. and F. C. Holland. British Postmarks. A Short History and Guide. Cheltenham, R. C. Orcock. 1960. 299p. Handy. John G. The History of the Postmarks of the British Isles from 1840 to 1876. London. Stanley Gibbons. 1909. 184p. Pearson, George R. Special Event Postmarks of the United Kingdom. Hemel Hempstead. British Postmark Society. 1984, ISBN 0-90021401-5. 276p. Whitney, J. T. Collect British Postmarks. Benfleet. 1990. British Postmark Database. Postal Stationery. Huggins, Alan. British Postal Stationery. London. Great Britain Philatelic Society. 1971, 188p. Huggins, Alan and Colin Baker. Collect British Postal Stationery. A simplified listing of British postal stationery 1840 to 2007. GB Philatelic Publications. 2007, ISBN 978-0-907630-22-7. 151p. Postal History. Campbell Smith. Duncan. Masters of the Post. The Authorised History of the Royal Mail. London. Penguin. 2012, ISBN 978-0-2-4195766-0. 849p. John Bartholomew and Son. Postal History Map of Britain. An illustrated map in full colour with a border of postage stamps. Edinburgh. John Bartholomew and Son. 1970. Marshall. C. F. Dendy. The British Post Office from its beginnings to the end of 1925. London. Humphrey Milford. Oxford University Press. 1926. 354p. Robinson, Howard. The British Post Office. A History. Princeton. Princeton University Press. 1948. 467p. Bibliography. Strange, Arnold M. A list of books on the postal history, postmarks and adhesive postage and revenue stamps of Great Britain. London. Great Britain Philatelic Society. 1971, ISBN 0-90142103-0. 48p. External links. Royal Mail Stamps Portal. British Postal Museum and Archive. The 1883 Great Britain Unified issue by Tony Stamford. Maidenhead Philatelic Society. Archived here. The Penny Red Collector. The Pound SD Postage Stamp Booklets of Great Britain. The Pound SD Postage Stamps of Great Britain issued in rolls.